So there's a piece of advice I've seen quite a few times, and it probably is a good piece of advice when it comes to selling books. And that piece of advice is stick to one genre. And I just want to talk about this today because I think that I do see the reason for sticking to one genre, but I think we need to explore whether or not we should do that and determine for ourselves why we would or why we would not. Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppie. You can find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. If it is your first time here, How to Write Good is a writing podcast that seeks to find principles and advice that can be applied across a broad range of writing situations. If you've been here before, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button below, and share. So let's just talk about first why this advice is given, and it does make sense, right? This advice is given specifically related to marketing and getting books out to people. You know, if you write a book in a specific genre and people read it and they like it, I don't want to say that people are lazy, but maybe people don't have enough time to actually explore new things. Right? People like a specific type of thing, and if you shift how you write or you shift what genre you're in, people are less likely to enjoy it because they really want something familiar. This is why once you hit a certain age, and I don't know if this is why, just because people fall into habits and they don't have time or they're lazy or whatever. I don't want to call people lazy necessarily. It might just be because you don't have enough time. But people like familiarity, and the more people see something, the more people hear a song, the more people read a book, the more familiar they're going to be with it, and the more they're going to like it. That's actually true with songs. It takes a few different times before someone actually enjoys a song, and I have theories about that. I have no idea why. I would think it's because songs have to do with a specific type of rhythm. Rhythm is circular in nature. Rhythm comes around to the same type of thing. This is why if you listen to, and I had an episode about this, I think, about Hook by Blues Traveler, which is a 90s band. They have a song about how they use, they wrote the song in a specific way where even if they don't sing about anything, the hook of the song, the refrain of the song is always going to bring people back. It's the familiar part. People like that thing. So I think that's what's happening in music, and I think something as similar is happening in writing. Now, people don't usually think about this, but writing is circular as well, and I think that the process of building a fan base is circular to some degree, where you write a book and then people find your book and people like your book, and then you write another one and those same people come back for more, but then they kind of, because they're getting a book, it kind of builds up a little bit more, and it's more like this backward spiral that's getting bigger, if that makes sense. But for marketing, if you write something and you people really like it, and then you write something completely different or something that doesn't fit in the same genre, people might run into it and they might think, well, I don't like, this isn't the same thing. This isn't why I came here. This isn't why I'm reading this book. This isn't why I'm reading this author. Now, I'm a little different, and I'm sure there's quite a few out there like me. For me, if I read a book by an author and then I read another book that's essentially the same book, I actually say, meh, I don't like this, because I want something new. I want something that is different. I want something that expands or goes beyond the writing ability or tries something different that the author hasn't tried before. I'm not necessarily saying I want something completely different from what they wrote the first time or off the wall crazy, but I do want a progression of their writing skill and a progression of their storytelling ability, if that makes sense. All right, so it makes sense from a marketing perspective why you should stick in one genre, because you become like a master in that genre. You become really good at that genre, and then people come back for more because people do read genres. And I don't really read genres. I've never read in one genre. I've always based it off of whether I like the book or not. I do tend to get books from science fiction sections, but I'm more interested. See, the thing about getting books from science fiction sections is you label it science fiction, but science fiction isn't a real genre. Science fiction is, you can put whatever you want in that book, but it has to look like science fiction. Science fiction isn't a real genre. It doesn't have specific features that make it science fiction or not. You can take a Western and you can put certain elements in it that are high tech, and you've made a science fiction story, even though it reads like a Western. This is why the movie Logan is a Western, and it's also science fiction, because it has the idea of mutants in it. That changes it to science fiction, but it's written like a Western. It's written like an older type of slower story, and it does reference the movie, the book, because it is a book originally. Shane in the movie saying, hey, this is essentially, or this is to a certain degree, a retelling of Shane. These parallel each other. So we have the idea of why you should be writing in a specific genre. But at the same time, part of me doesn't think it's good. If you want to make money and you want to be successful in that sphere, I think that writing in a specific genre isn't the best, is probably the best bet. But at the same time, it seems antithetical to what is happening within writing. It seems antithetical to why we are writers in the first place. And the reason why we are writers in the first place is because we are trying to explore different ideas, is because we're trying to take an idea, we're trying to take a story, we're trying to push the bounds of that story, and we're trying to find the edges, right? We're trying to create a reality that makes sense using different elements that we wouldn't be able to come across in our own lives. And that can be something really weird. Right now, I'm writing a gothic horror noir series that also has science fiction, that also has fantasy, that also has what did I just say? Science fiction already. Adventure elements. And it's weird, and I'm trying to explore different ideas using that story, and I'm doing it quickly. But at the same time, I'm taking that story and I'm trying to use the ideas within that story. I'm trying to use the world of that story to the farthest extent that it can be used, to the furthest extent that it can be used. And I think that's what we should be doing with writing in general. We see something in our life, and I don't think you're necessarily going to have to write fiction that is like the real world. You can add weird things into the story, but you are trying to push the boundaries of the human experience. And let me explain that using horror, okay? Horror is meant to hijack our emotion of fear. And people like reading and people like watching horror because it gives them it makes them exhilarated. It's like going on a roller coaster. That's essentially what horror is. But it's also exploring the fear that humans have. It's also exploring the fear that humans can experience. And writing, telling stories is extremely emotional, and the shape of a story will help a person go on an emotional journey. And then the content of that story can make that emotional journey extremely significant. Now, I don't think that writing is just the emotional journey. I think there is content. I think there are ideas that go into that, but it's more like going through your own life, okay? If you have a phenomenal experience, or if you have a unique experience, or if you have an experience that fills you with terror, that experience, what you're trying to do in writing is you're trying to parallel something similar to those experiences. You're not just trying to make someone feel something. You're not just trying to make someone think about something. You're trying to make someone go through an experience. And going through an experience has a tactile sense to it. This is why writers always talk about, hey, write in the concrete. It has a tactile sense to it. Write in the concrete, write using the five senses. Or if you think you have six, you can write using the sixth sense. If you want to do that, go ahead. It also has this idea that you should write in a way where it connects to the reader's emotions. And you have this, and this is often carried along by the characters, where people get connected to the characters and they begin to love the characters. And when something happens to the characters, they have an emotional response. But you are using that experience to show them who the character is. And then you're bringing them through that experience so they have this journey with the character. So they begin to learn who the character is. Now, I think that if you stick to one genre, you can do a lot with one genre, all right? You can do a lot with one genre. You can explore it. You can explore it to as its limits as far as it can go. But if you stick to that one genre, I think that you may be missing out on other things that you could be doing with writing. If you are someone who is constantly writing basic science fiction, the hard science fiction, I guess, is what I would call it. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to insult that type of science fiction. But if you're someone who's always writing hard science fiction, you might want to try writing something completely different. Now, maybe it won't sell. Maybe your readers won't like it. But at the same time, you'll probably learn something. And because there are so many different genres and there's so many different types of stories, I think that you owe it to yourself. I think maybe you don't owe it to yourself. Maybe you don't deserve it. But I think that you might be missing out on what you can do with your creativity if you're limiting yourself to one genre. Again, I'm going to put in this disclaimer. It might not be good for people liking your books. I'm just going to say that. So you have to make the decision yourself. But at the same time, it seems like there's too many people, and maybe I'm included with this, but there's so many people who are concerned about the money that's coming with the thing they're writing. And you see this so much at this time, 2020, you see this so much with Hollywood. It seems like all they're concerned about is money. There's very few people, it seems, who want to put together just a very good story that people love. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of seeing it in books too. I'm tired of seeing that one author who writes the same book over and over and over again. And I'm not saying that you're that person. I hope that I'm not that person. But I just want I said this, I don't know if it was my last podcast or the one before this. I want to price myself out of the writing market. I want to help people become such good writers that I can't even compete. That's my hope. I shouldn't be able to compete with the writers who are at the top. And right now there's some writers who are very good, but a lot of writers I read and I think, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to be mean, but at the same time I think to myself, I'm like, well, is this really the best that we have to offer for writing? Are people just not reading that much? Are people just not spending this much time writing? And I just don't know. I seriously just don't know. One thing that goes along with this, and I just want to say this and I'll be done with this episode, is if you decide to stick to one genre, what if your best book would be in another genre? What if you'd be phenomenal at another genre and the best that you can do would be in that genre, not in the one you're sticking to? You know, that'd be kind of a shame if you stuck to the genre you're in and never explored anything else. And that's it. That's what I'm going to leave you today. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support me, there's really one simple thing you can do. You can go to danielpoppie.com/newsletter and sign up for my newsletter. And when you sign up, you'll actually be able to get access to my publication roadmap. So that's everything I have planned for pretty much every project I have into the next decade. Again, that is danielpoppie.com/newsletter. You can also find the link below.